I thought of my situation for the next few days. I finally came to the conclusion that they were not going to run me away from where I grew up. This was where I lived. F them all. If I moved, I would be a wimp. I talked to Mr. Simpson the next morning. He told me I could keep my old job and that he was glad I was staying. I told Rick and Rhonda of my plans, and they offered the use of their spare bedroom for as long as I liked. The next week, I found a place outside of town on a little country road. It was 10 acres of land with a 2-bedroom trailer and a large building that looked like it had been a barn. I signed a rent-to-own deal with the owner and moved in with what little I had. I spent some of my overtime money to furnish the trailer. I had taken the videotape to my lawyer earlier. I got the tape back and told him I would bring him a copy. I made copies of the tape and sent one to Henry's bosses. My lawyer had found out where he worked and gave me the address. I called Henry's house when I figured he would not be home. A woman answered the phone and I asked for Henry. She said, "Henry is not here. I am his wife. Can I help you?" I thought of my situation for the next few days. I finally came to the conclusion that they were not going to run me away from where I grew up. This was where I lived. F them all. If I moved, I would be a wimp. I talked to Mr. Simpson the next morning. He told me I could keep my old job and that he was glad I was staying. I told Rick and Rhonda of my plans, and they offered the use of their spare bedroom for as long as I liked. The next week, I found a place outside of town on a little country road. It was 10 acres of land with a 2-bedroom trailer and a large building that looked like it had been a barn. I signed a rent-to-own deal with the owner and moved in with what little I had. I spent some of my overtime money to furnish the trailer. I had taken the videotape to my lawyer earlier. I got the tape back and told him I would bring him a copy. I made copies of the tape and sent one to Henry's bosses. My lawyer had found out where he worked and gave me the address. I called Henry's house when I figured he would not be home. A woman answered the phone and I asked for Henry. She said, "Henry is not here. I am his wife. Can I help you?" I said, "I have a tape of Henry and my wife having it. I thought I had better warn you. This may come out in the open." She broke in and said, "Oh my God, I don't know who you are. Why are you calling me?" I said, "Ma'am, I don't want to alarm you, but Henry has been having sex with 2 people that I know of. I have a tape with him and my wife. I am going to turn it over to my lawyer. I can give you a copy, or you can get a copy from my lawyer. I thought that you should know. It may come up in the divorce proceedings." She was quiet for about 30 seconds and then she said, "I know he has been running around on me. Please have your lawyer call me. Would you give me your name?" I said, "You can get it from my lawyer." I took the tape back to my lawyer and asked him to call Henry's wife and give her a copy of the tape. I went by Rick and Rhonda's house one afternoon to pick up some things I had left there. Rhonda told me that she had heard Henry's wife had kicked him out and was getting a divorce. He had lost his job and had moved away. Jen's husband had kicked her out and they were getting a divorce also. All of our divorces were final within a month of each other, according to the newspaper. About a month later, I was sitting in a restaurant eating supper. I had my back to the door, so I was surprised when these 2 women sat down in chairs at my table. It was Pat and Jen. Pat wanted to know what I was doing. I didn't say anything. She asked, "Would you like to take a couple of ladies to the club?" I replied, "Yeah. Tell them to come see me." She said, "We are sitting right here." I said, "I see 2 warehouse. I don't see any ladies." They got up and left. I saw Pat had tears in her eyes. I decided I would start my own welding business in the building on my place. I cleaned up the building and got all my equipment installed. I was open evenings and weekends to start. It wasn't long before I had more than I could handle, so I quit the plant and went full-time. I was working long hours and had to hire 2 full-time and a part-time welder. I began to do contract work and wound up with 3 full travel crews. The plant went to contract and I got that deal. I didn't have much of a life outside work. One day 2 men came in to talk to me about a contract job. They wanted to go to a club for some drinks. I tried to get out of it, but I finally gave in. I don't drink, but I could buy for them, I figured. We had been at the club for a while when I saw Jim coming back to the table with Jen and Pat in tow. I didn't say anything. Jim said, "Hey, look what I found. Sorry I couldn't find one for you, Roger. Maybe we can share." I got up and said, "I will see you tomorrow." As I left, Pat started walking by my side and said, "Why don't you stay for a while? You might enjoy yourself." I said, No thanks. I have already seen you F one man. I don't care to go through that again. She reached back like she was going to slap me. I said, don't do it. I will embarrass the hell out of you. You go F your new friend. Jen is really pulling you to the bottom, isn't she? I left. Jim came by the next day. He said, I apologize. I didn't know that was your wife. I said, ex-wife. And don't worry about it. I had to get some permits from the courthouse, but when I got there, the clerk I had to see was gone on her lunch break. I sat down on the bench, and in a few minutes a young boy came up to me and said, Hi, my name is Jimmy and I am this many old, as he held up his outstretched hand. I told him my name and asked if he wanted to get up on the bench. He nodded yes, so I reached down and sat him up. He pointed over to a gorgeous woman standing in line and said, That is my mommy. Her loves me. Her is a good cook too. Her made me pancakes this morning. I drink all my milk. Her cries sometimes. It make me sad. I play t-ball. At the park I hit the ball and run to the base, and then I run to another base. It is fun. She walked up at this time and asked if he was bothering me. I told her that we were visiting, and he was telling me about him playing t-ball. She said, yes. He plays Mondays and Thursdays at the park on Old Spike Road. Oh, my name is Linda, and you know Jimmy? I told her my name was Roger and asked if I could come out and watch Jimmy play sometimes. She smiled and said, I think he would like that. As I left, I waved and said, Jimmy, I will see you at the ballpark. He waved back. I started going to the games and got to know Linda and Jimmy. I would take them for ice cream after the games. Linda worked for an insurance company as a secretary, was divorced, and was not seeing anyone. I wanted to ask her out on a date, but I still could not shake my feelings of messing up again. I knew all women were not like Pat, but I knew I didn't want to go through something like that again. And the only way I knew to avoid it was to stay away from women. My business was getting too much for me to handle the paperwork and payroll and go out and check the jobs and do the bids on the contracts. I asked Linda if she knew a good secretary that could also do payroll and keep books. She looked at me for a minute and said, Yes, I know a lady that just might fit that bill. I gave her my card and asked that she have the lady call or come by the shop. I told her I was there from 7 in the morning until late at night. The next morning about 8 o'clock, the door to the office opened and in walked Linda. I looked up in surprise as she said, I understand you need a secretary, bookkeeper, payroll clerk. I would like to apply for the job. I sat there with a stunned look on my face. I said, When can you start? She laughed and said, that was a quick interview. I need to give 2 weeks notice, but I can come by in the evenings and start to learn the job and help you out. I said, Bring Jimmy with you, and he has plenty of space to play here. Come out tonight, and I will fix supper for you and Jimmy. She laughed and said, Don't spoil me, but that would be nice. I asked what she would need as far as pay. She told me what she was making at the insurance agency, and I told her I could beat that by $50 a week and maybe more later. She said, I could kiss you. I said, I just might let you, and grinned. I think I was falling in love with this woman. Linda started work, and it took a load off me. I could get out to check on my jobs more and land more work. Linda started cooking supper every night in the trailer, and we finally admitted to each other that we loved the other. We started to date. One night it was raining real hard, and I invited her and Jimmy to stay over. She and Jimmy went to bed in the spare bedroom. During the night she came and got into my bed. As she slid under the covers, she said, Just hold me. It has been so long since I have been in the arms of a man. I love you, Roger, and I know you have some commitment hang-ups. Let me help you. We both cried a long time that night. We didn't have it, but we did get close and things started to open up for me. One night not long after, she came to the trailer about 10 o'clock and had on her raincoat, but it wasn't raining. When she came through the door, she pulled her coat off and stood there in a very sexy gown. She looked at me for a minute and said, I think it is time for us to take this relationship further. I agreed that I was ready. We made tender, passionate love that night, and I realized that I wanted this woman and her child in my life. She moved in with me, and we started planning our wedding and started making plans to build our house. I had to go to a city about 4 hours from home to check on a job and submit a bid for the welding portion. One of the men wanted me to go to a bar with him that night. I told him I didn't drink, but I would go if we didn't stay too long. As I sat there, I kept seeing this guy that I thought I knew and finally recognized Henry. He was a lot thinner, and looked pretty ragged. He needed a haircut, and his suit was a little worn and shiny. I watched as he made his moves on the women, and most turned him down when he asked them to dance. I saw he still had the moves on the dance floor. I thought, this is my opportunity to settle my last revenge. When Jack told me he was ready to go, I took him by his place and dropped him off. I went back to the bar and waited for Henry to come out. If he came out with someone, I would leave, but if he came out alone, I would do my thing. A few years ago, I came across a nightstick that was a little longer than normal. I carried it under the seat of my truck. I got it from under my seat and waited. A little after 1 a.m., Henry came around the side of the bar and was staggering toward the parking lot. I eased out of my truck with the stick behind me. He stopped when I approached, and Henry said, "Hey man, you got a smoke I could get off you?" I said, "No, Henry, but I do have something for you. Do you remember my wife?" He started to turn to run when I swung with all my anger and strength at his knees. He fell to the ground and started to moan. I was going to swing for his left when I realized all my anger was gone and I didn't need to go further. I leaned over and said, "Henry, it has been a long time coming. I wouldn't recommend with any more wives." As I walked away, I heard him say, "Man, who the are you? Don't leave me here. I need a doctor." I never told anyone about that until now. Linda and I got married, and we are finishing up our house. We build a 4-bedroom ranch-style home about 100 yards from the shop. We hope to have some children of our own in the near future. Linda and Jimmy have helped me more than I can believe. I have put everything behind me in the revenge section, and I know we will be happy. One last note. Last week, a lawyer called and said Pat wanted to sell the house, but somehow it was not covered in the divorce settlement. My name was still on the deed, and I would have to sign for her to sell. He asked me to be in his office at 10 the next morning. I wanted Linda to go with me, but she said it would be better if I went by myself. Pat was in the waiting room when I got there. I spoke to her, and she spoke back. She had tears in her eyes, and she finally said, "Roger, I know you don't care, but I want to say I am sorry for what I did to you. I have finally realized that I was all the things you called me and more. I am leaving here and going to live with my sister. She lost her husband, and I think we can help each other. Jen is married to a guy that beats her, and I could not deal with that. I want you to have half of the proceeds from the house. I wish things had been different." I told her, "Well, okay. I am doing okay in my business. I am married to a wonderful woman who had a little boy, and we are happy. I hated you for a long time until it turned to pity. Then I got over the pity and finally let all feelings go. Now I can only wish you the best in your life, Pat." We signed the papers. I shook her hand and left. Revenge can be sweet, but most times it is not. It is a very bitter thing.